My name's Chip Kohser. I spent almost 4 decades involved with Joy Dog Food. My dad and a good friend of his started the original company in 1946, 1945. Originally it was a feed company, farm feeds, progressed into a dog food company. I came on board in 1975, and we continued the business until Wade acquired the business around 2011, if I remember right. The company originally started, as I said, latter part of 1945, beginning of 46. My dad and a fellow by the name of Ab Schiffler were the ones that put it together. And it was a farm feed company based out of, at that time, Washington, Pennsylvania, outside of Pittsburgh. Their business was a chain of feed stores in the tri-state area, Pennsylvania, West Virginia, Ohio, and they manufactured farm feeds. Their whole concept was, we'll provide feed at a reasonable price and high quality to the farmers in the area. In 1953, they started, for lack of a better term, playing or experimenting with potential dog food formulas. They worked with a nutritionist and came up with something that they felt would be suitable for dogs. In 1954, the Joy name came about. So they sat in Ab Schiffler's kitchen one day when they were actually working with Mrs. Schiffler's stove, cooking up some different dog food formulas, and they came upon the name Joy. And that's where that came from, and that was trademarked in 1954. Ab Schiffler and his wife raised dachshunds, and they had a female that they had had a number of good litters out of, and her name was Joy. And that's why they decided, okay, that'll work. It's easy to spell. We can fit it on a bag pretty easy, and to the best of our knowledge, other than dish soap, there's nobody else out there using the name Joy. So that's where that came from. And we had always had a good following among people with working dogs. Now, they could be simply farm dogs that they were using. In many cases, the guys with sheep had herding dogs. It would be coon dogs. At that time, Beagles was extremely big from the standpoint of competitive field trials. So we started focusing our efforts in that regard and saying, okay, we can do this. These people are buying in quantity. We don't have to deal with the supermarkets. We maybe will deal with some country stores, but we're also going to be able to deal with feed stores. And that was a business, obviously, we knew from our roots, which was in the farm feed business. That business created a new foundation, if you will, for Joy Dog Food. In the late 70s, I came on board in 1975. In 1980, it became such a lowest price concept from the standpoint of the private label manufacturing. We had a product at that time, actually 3 products. We had Joy Kibble, which was the original product. We had Joy Chunks, but we had this product that was called Joy Meal. And it actually, at that time, it was a granular meal. If people are familiar with chicken crumbles, that was the type of texture that it had. And it was 26% protein. We had one that was 7% fat, one was a 10% fat. We had also experimented with one that was 13% fat, which was unheard of at that time. And that was at the request of sled dog people up in New England. We pared that back, and we come up with the idea that 10% fat would be something that was acceptable. And we started pushing that product. And we started pushing it primarily at the local level. We had initially 5 or 6 salesmen, and they would spend every weekend initially at a beagle trial, just taking bags of product, telling people to sample it with their dogs. A lot of beagle kennels at that time had 30, 40, 50 dogs, so there was some volume was involved. And we found out that the people liked the dog food, the dogs liked the dog food. We were able to offer them a more economical price than some of the competitors that were producing good product. But then the other thing is all of a sudden they discovered the dog's condition improved, and a big thing at that time was what was the quality of the dog's stool. That was a good way of determining if the dog was getting out of the product what was intended by having a reduced stool that was formed well. And basically we pushed that, and we pushed at that local level. We started, we had been advertising in a few of the working dog magazines, Beagles, some of the bird dog magazines, coon dogs to a small degree initially, and we started putting together some ads. Most of them were sitting with a piece of scratch paper, sitting at a desk and coming up with something, and then telling the guy that was putting the ad together, find a dog picture to throw along with this script. And that became the basis. All of a sudden the coon dog world was really coming alive, and that would have been in the early 80s. It was always there, but it was never a recognizable sport, except for at that time UKC. We were doing a lot of business down south and in the Midwest, and that tied in with this emerging entity, which was PKC. Jarvis Humphers was the guy that first created the whole idea of how PKC operated. I always said that Jarvis was the P.T. Barnum of competition dogs, and anybody that knows any history of that knows that there was always something new. Whether it was a national champ, started out as a national championship, then you had the world hunt, and then you had your super stakes. You had an endless list of different types of competitions. We got involved early in the 80s when PKC was in its infancy, and that was a right choice on our part. Nobody else really was interested in PKC, and they were little guys the same as we were, so we decided, okay, we'll make our bed and we'll see how it goes. Our first entree was with the youth. Originally the concept was they had regional qualifiers. There was only 12 kids in the first one, and we would provide funding that would provide scholarship for them once they graduated from high school, and they could use it for a trade school, they could use it for college. The money didn't go to the kid, didn't go to their mom and dad. It went straight from the PKC youth account and went straight to whatever the school was. And that, I believe, allowed the coon hunting world to look at Joy Dog Food a little bit different than they did the big competitors. These are regular people. They're caring about kids. They're willing to do something with the kids. And obviously from our standpoint, if you were doing something for the kids and it was competitive and it was fair, it was pretty easy for mom or dad to support Joy Dog Food as well. So originally there was people that used Joy Dog Food simply because of what we did for the sport, be it coon hunting, be it beagles, or whatever the case might be, because we supported the sport. What they found out was once they started using Joy Dog Food, it was pretty good dog food. So we continued to develop the formulas, and obviously there's ebbs and flows in the industry from the standpoint of what you do with formulas. And there was a lot of times where we had the formula that was the formula for people with competition dogs and working dogs. My dad died in 1995, but between 1985 and 1993, basically he spent probably 250 days a year on the road, and all he did was go to events and see people. Now he may show up at a local club hunt that was a $100 prize money or 10 bags of dog food. He might show up at one of those, but then the next week he might show up at the World Hunt. He enjoyed people, he liked people. Fortunately for us, people liked him. When my dad finally retired because of health reasons, I did a lot of that, but a lot of that fell in the lap of some of the salespeople we had out there. Doing much of the same thing as my son Chip and Josh and the rest of the guys are doing for Wade today, where basically they're going to meeting people at their level, figuring out a way that they can do business with Joy Dog Food, and then working, quite honestly, working their tails off to help them find customers and putting that network together and producing a good product that performs. And again, is at a price that's very acceptable given what competition's offering. Wade's done a good job of not just maintaining, but actually improving the quality from what it was whenever I was there. Improving the formulas. In some cases, he has drawn attention to probably ingredients that maybe I wouldn't even considered. You know, pumpkin is a tremendous additive that you use in dog food. Those are improvements to the product. In many cases, you're able to use natural ingredients that provide the nutrient balance that you used to only get by using vitamin premixes and trace mineral premixes. So from that standpoint, Joy has evolved tremendously from the standpoint of formalization. Wade, in the last few years, has made the decision to jump back into, in a relatively large way, and sponsoring is probably not the right word, probably working together with working dog fancies, be it bird dogs, be it coon dogs, be it beagles or whatever. And what appears to be, from what I hear from Wade and what I hear from my son Chip, fortunately, there's enough folks out there to remember how Joy Dog Food did it years ago. Excuse me. And appreciated the way we were honest with them and the way we did business, that today they're willing to give it another shot. And the way Wade has run his company, the way Chip and Josh and the rest of the salespeople conduct themselves, has proven to be a continuation of how to do business in a manner that truly cares about your customer. And as I look back on it now, being out of it for almost 10 years now, I guess that's probably the thing that makes me the most proud and satisfied, and I know it would my dad, when we look at the way Wade's doing business today. And I think I know Wade good enough that I have a reasonable expectation that he'll continue to do that. I likewise feel that being brought up in the environment that he was, my son will never forget his roots. And the attitude and the behavior that came along with that. I'm sorry, I didn't think it was going to be tough on me, but it is. So from that standpoint, I'm excited about what they're doing. I think there's not just good, but great things that are in the future for Joy Dog Food.